Hello, welcome to Washington Talk. I'm Connie Kim. It's been 2 years since President Trump and Chairman Kim Jong-un met for the first time in Singapore. Marking the 2 years since the first U.S.-North Korea summit, the U.S. says it's willing to take a flexible approach on reaching an agreement on all the Singapore summit commitments. However, North Korea says it's going to build a more reliable force to counter U.S. military threats. Today, we get an assessment of the 2 years since the Singapore summit and the current situation on the Korean Peninsula. Today, joining us is Congressman Adam Smith. He has served on the House Armed Services Committee since he started in Congress and now serves as chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman Ted Yoho also joins us today. Congressman Yoho is the lead Republican for the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Asia, the Pacific, and Nonproliferation. Congressman Yoho had also served on the House Foreign Affairs Committee since he started in Congress. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I want to start with North Korea's foreign minister's latest comment on the U.S.-North Korea summit back in 2018. North Korea did say that it's going to build a more reliable force to counter U.S. military threats. So looking back the 2 years, how do you assess the current situation between the U.S. and North Korea? Let's start with you first, Chairman Smith.
Well, I think the Trump administration was right to try to reach out to Kim Jong-un. South Korea has been, trying to do that as well, try to build relationships, build the basis for an improvement in relations. And during that time period, up until recently, there had been an enormous amount of progress in the sense that tensions on the Korean Peninsula had been reduced. The various different, provocations that used to happen were happening a lot less. And I view that as a positive. So it's worth it to try and have that conversation and see if you can get to a better place. Unfortunately, they were not able to ultimately get an agreement. We have seen an increase in missile tests from North Korea since then. There has been something of an increase in tension. But look, I think this is the approach we have to try and take. We have to try and, reduce North Korea's nuclear arsenal and eliminate it eventually. That must be the position. But in the meantime, we have to make sure to be blunt about it, stop a war from starting. We have to find ways to have a dialogue with North Korea to reduce the possibility of that conflict while sticking to the ultimate goal of a denuclearized Korean peninsula.
Mm-hmm. Congressman Yoho, how did you see this current situation right now?
Well, everything Adam said was spot on. And for the generals in North Korea to say that they have to build up their military to ward off an American attack, we're not doing the provocation. The provocation is coming from the mindset of the people that are controlling the powers in North Korea. The last thing we want is another conflict. And I would urge the people in North Korea, if the people in the military are watching this, look at past history. I mean, the past wars, if you start with World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, or the Korean conflict, look at that and look at the aftermath. The aftermath is a lot of people died. It costs a lot of money, but now we're big trading partners. And so let's do without war. Let's look at those things that we can do to avoid war. And that's coming back to the table and negotiating. I think that's the best thing to do.
Mm-hmm. So Chairman Smith did mention that it did have significance because it de-escalated tensions on the Korean Peninsula. But right now there is criticism that there is not much progress on the denuclearization front. So let's come back to how do we move the talks forward?
Well, I think it's important that we do maintain the sanctions, that we maintain our steadfast position that their nuclear program is destabilizing, it's in violation of international law, and it must be removed. I don't think we can move off of that. The difficulty is, look, nobody really thinks North Korea is going to get rid of their nuclear weapons anytime soon. That's obviously the goal. And if anyone's got any bright ideas about how to make that happen, I'm wide open to them. But we've been through now, let me do my count here, 4 different U.S. administrations who have taken every conceivable tact you can to get to that point, and it has not proven successful. So, we got to keep trying, but we also have to be mindful of the world that we live in. And like I said, try to make, deconflict. And I think interaction is very important. I mean, I want to amplify a point that Ted made a moment ago. North Korea, the propaganda that they pump into North Koreans, most North Koreans, and I know what Ted knows, the U.S. is not invading North Korea, ever. We have no intention of coming. We're not doing any provocation there. But if you're a North Korean, That's what you hear every single day. And there's all kinds of propaganda and dishonesty that is, tries to scare the North Korean people into believing that it's happening. It's not happening. The only risk of provocation on the Korean Peninsula is North Korea attacking its neighbors, and we will defend them if that happens. But there's no U.S. intention. So we got to get that message out. I think if the North Korean people were aware of the fact that if they abandoned their nuclear program, they could have a much better life. The economy could grow. They could do what Ted just described. We begin to develop the country as so many other countries in the world have. So we need to find ways to deliver that message. We're not going to change Kim Jong-un just by convincing him. We're going to have to convince the North Korean people and the people around him that there's a better path.
So, Congressman Yoho, what should be the steps that North Korea should be showing to show that they're sincere about denuclearization?
Well, I think the first thing they need to do is, stop the provocation and building up their military. The thought of launching ballistic missiles from submarines, I mean, that's a step getting closer to an imminent strike from them to us is the way we view it. And we don't want that, and they don't want that. And I think the first thing that really needs to happen is to go back to the beginning of these talks. I think Kim Jong-un and the people that are advising him are thinking, if we get into talks with the United States, they'll ease off the sanctions and then we'll build up our military. That's not going to happen with this president. And I would think what they would want to do first is define what denuclearization means to the north, to the south. And, we're facilitators. South Korea needs to have a big hand in this. And, if we can come to terms on what denuclearization means, then you can move forward. If you don't have that definition, it's hard to negotiate because nobody is in agreement on what you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. So Chairman Smith mentioned the emphasis of sanctions on North Korea earlier, and there is bipartisan support for exerting pressure on North Korea. And Congressman Yoho, you had previously proposed to the administration of sanctioning the Agriculture Bank of China and the Chinese Construction Bank to the administration after the Hanoi summit fell apart. Do you think it's time for the administration to push for these measures?
I really do, Connie, because what we've seen is China is a member of the UN Security Council, permanent member, as is Russia. And there was a vote back several years ago when there was a unanimous vote of all the members of the Security Council that said we are going to put sanctions on North Korea. China is probably one of the biggest people that don't abide by that. And so they're allowing the economy of North Korea to continue. And we have those tools ready. And it's just up to this administration. You're going to see more isolation of China, and they'll become the pariah that North Korea is.
Chairman Smith, do you agree that secondary sanctions should be imposed on these large Chinese banks? Because there are concerns that this could be too disruptive due to the geopolitical reasons.
I'm not sure if I'd be willing to take that step at this point. I think that the problem is what you both described. The tensions between the U.S. and China have elevated, and they've elevated because Xi has decided to become a lot more aggressive. Certainly in Hong Kong, but you've seen it with all of the neighbors, with the Philippines, with Vietnam, with South Korea, Japan. China is not paying attention to international law. They're doing land grabs. They're alienating. They've decided to be more of a bully and more aggressive in the approach that they have taken. And that creates a problem because at the end of the day, they are key to bringing Kim Jong-un under control and getting to denuclearization. They have more leverage over North Korea than us by a long way. So we need to be able to work with China on this. They're going to be crucial to getting North Korea to where they need to be. But given their approach, their aggressive approach, it's more difficult to work with them. But I'm not sure if we take that extra step and start sanctioning them, if you sever that, if basically you put China and North Korea together against the international community, that's a risky move. Now, it may be that we reach the point where we know, China's not going to be as helpful as they should be. So we have to take this step to hold them accountable for it. I'm willing to consider that. But we need to find a way to work better with China and North Korea. So I want to still continue to try to pursue those paths despite the bad Chinese behavior that's created the problem.
Mm-hmm. we'll have to see what kind of a decision the administration will make regarding sanctioning these big Chinese financial institutions. And you mentioned the importance of China's role in garnering North Korea back to the negotiating table. And China and Russia have been calling for temporary sanctions relief in the face of the coronavirus. So what do you make of these calls from China and Russia?
Well, I think both China and Russia are trying to upset the international order. And it's interesting because I certainly understand why Russia is trying to do that. Russia really doesn't play by the rules just in general. Their economy isn't doing well. I think they're wrong. I think if they were to embrace the international community, embrace the international norms, it would help Russia improve their economy and improve their opportunity. But China, on the other hand, they're right. With the exception of the United States, nobody benefits more from the World Trade Organization, from the international norms that have been put in place. China, is one of the leading exporters in the world. And with what they're doing in Hong Kong, with what they're doing with North Korea, they are breaking those norms, and they will pay a high price for that in terms of the impact on their economy.
Congressman Yoho, what's your take on this?
We differ a little bit on the approach to China. I've been in Congress for 8 years, and we've seen China ramp up their bad behavior from what they're doing in the EC and the other regions of the South China Sea, the claims that they're doing, the taunting they're doing to other nations. And the longer we let this happen, the stronger China gets. And if we were to wait another 3 to 5 years, my question is, can we do anything at that point in time? Or are we going to be at a flashpoint? And I don't want that, and I don't think anybody else wants that. And again, I think we just need to work at getting people to the table, and keep in mind that China accounts for 90% of the trade with North Korea. And if China is a member of the UN Security Council, a permanent member, and they're not abiding by what they agreed to, I would love to find a way to help remove them or put pressure on them so that they would abide by this. It's not us trying to tell them what to do. It's them owning up to the responsibility that they agreed to. And if they were to do this, I think you would see Kim Jong-un come to the table quicker to where we could have a peaceful resolution. And I think ultimately that's what everybody wants.
And let me just add that I completely agree that the U.S. needs to work with the international community to find more leverage points to put pressure on China. I completely agree with that. I just think we need to be careful and smart about what those leverage points are. And the more nations in the world who are with us, the stronger that approach will be.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. So sanctions relief and sanctions lifting is a key issue for North Korea. It's been demanding that its sanctions be lifted. So Congressman Yoho, you briefly earlier mentioned that it's important to get the definition, an agreement of the definition of denuclearization. So what kind of measures should the North Koreans take in order for sanctions easing to even start? Because North Korea does argue that it has taken sincere steps. It has put a moratorium on the nuclear and ICBM tests, and that it has dismantled the nuclear test facility.
Sure. I mean, those are great steps to take, but you also have to look what we've done. We've backed off on the military exercises with South Korea. We have worked with North Korea on some other things, the humanitarian aid, that the sanctions have been removed. And there was questions that with the COVID-19 outbreak or pandemic, that there should be more humanitarian aid. For the people of North Korea that are watching this, if you guys are short on humanitarian necessities or PPEs and things like that, I would question, why are you building and perfecting ICBM delivery systems with a submarine when nobody's trying to attack you, instead of investing money into your own people? Those are questions that I would like to ask Kim Jong-un and his people are advising him.
Then what can the U.S. do in response to North Korea's sincere steps?
I think the biggest thing we can do is let them know that we're going to stand firm. As Adam said, we're going to stay strong on these sanctions. And I think you'll see more sanctions. And I hope that we'll see Russia and China and other nations, as Adam brought up. This is not a U.S. against North Korea. This is the world against a North Korea that is looking to possibly have nuclear weapons that they can unleash on the world. And this is something all nations of concern should be at the table of this. And what Kim Jong-un and his elite need to understand is we're not going to back off. And in fact, my prediction is you're going to see more sanctions going on to North Korea. And, as divided as the U.S. Congress is today, this is one thing that has strong bipartisan support. So Kim Jong-un and his regime can be thankful that they brought us together on this issue.
North Korea has broken every single agreement that they've made.
Right.
Around this for going back 20 some odd years. The Clinton administration, the Bush administration, the Obama administration all tried to say, okay, you do a little bit here, we'll ease up on the sanctions, you agree to go here, and they lied every step of the way. Every step of the way, they were continuing to test, they were continuing to develop, so they're going to have to do a lot more this time to get sanctions relief.
So what is your prospect on the stalled denuclearization talks going forward? So do you think that the stalled diplomacy will continue until after the U.S. presidential elections?
Oh, it's going to continue beyond that. It's not peculiar to who the U.S. president is. I mean, North Korea has been unwilling to take the steps necessary to truly move themselves down the path to denuclearization, and that's going to make it difficult. As I said, same answer here I gave as the opening answer. Trying to engage with North Korea is the right thing to do, but we shouldn't kid ourselves about that leading to any sort of immediate success. We got to keep trying. Maintaining peace on the peninsula is too important not to, but it's going to be a long road given that the choices that Kim Jong-un has made for North Korea.
Hi, Congressman Yoho.
What Adam said, I mean, I'm in alignment with that. And again, this shows you how this issue has been brought together by Kim Jong-un and the people of his elite party around him that are bringing us together on this issue. What we want is peace. We want to open up trade and have those things that make our people stronger and your people stronger. And the only way we're going to do that is to find out what those differences are, what we can do to define what denuclearization means. And I think everybody in the world would want to get to a point where we could uninvent nuclear technology that were used for destructive means like this. It's just something we need to move away from and just have strong diplomacy.
So we'll have to see what kinds of moves North Korea will make leading up to the presidential elections and see whether there will be an opening for talks or whether they will continue to further escalate tensions with the United States. Well, thank you so much, Chairman Smith and Congressman Yoho, for joining us today.
Thank you, Connie.
That does it for this week's special edition of Washington Talk, marking the 2 years since the first U.S.-North Korea summit. Please join us again next week for more analysis on North Korea. Goodbye.